Hello guys, good evening. Happy Monday to each and everyone. I hope you are well and okay. Tuning in already for our very special episode of WAZZUP Doc here at Global TV Network. I hope you are well and safe and you are excited with our today's episode or topic about gallbladder stones and cholecystitis. So, for those of you who've been in our pages, on my personal page, and for those of you na first time pang manood ng live na ito with me, I am Dr. Josephine Grace Chua Rojo, also known as your Diet Doctora. So, if you are there watching with your family and friends, please feel free to share this live video para yung mga kasama natin sa bahay and also yung mga friends and family natin can also learn from this topic. I hope the signal is okay and yung audio and video, yan, medyo nawawala talaga. But I hope it is going to be a good episode kahit medyo kulang-kulang yung signal natin. Kasi in my area right now, I'm just on data. Hindi ako naka-Wi-Fi ngayon. So, I will share this first with our viewers in my page so that silang lahat alam na nila. So, especially to our friends and families na very concerned with momming, you know, this episode is very special kasi nga it has something to do with momming. My mother, no, na recently alam nyong na ospital. Okay? Live na tayo ngayon. And we will talk about gallbladder health. I hope ngayon okay na yung signal natin. Please tune in, guys. Sana okay na, no? Kasi medyo mahina talaga yung signal. But I hope this one is okay. So, before we proceed, alam nyo na Maming has been hospitalized. Na-admit siya before Christmas. She and Bapi, my brother, who has special needs, na-hospital silang dalawa. And good news, okay na po sila ngayon. My Maming is actually here beside me. Nakahiga lang siya. But ayaw niya muna magpakita sa camera. So, excuse muna. And Bapi is also resting in our home. And hopefully, tuloy-tuloy na yung kanilang recovery. And with this episode, no, especially dedicated ito to my mother and also for each one of us. At saka, I think I've received a lot of inquiries na din and a lot of a request na to discuss gallbladder stones. Hello EJ, hello Riza, hello Chloe, my dear. And of course, yung first commenter, hello Mary Chris Kaday. Thank you so much for watching. So, yung numero 1 talaga, bakit nagkakaroon ng gallbladder stone? Bakit may mga tao nagpo-form ng stones while meron namang ibang tao na hindi nagpo-form ng stone? So, before we proceed, we have to appreciate kung ano talaga yung anatomy, normal anatomy and normal biochemistry ng ating katawan. Okay? So, hello, Cherise, my love, Mane, get well soon, Maming and Bapi, Raza Shark, Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas po, and advance Happy New Year. So, before we proceed, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment section and we will do our best to answer them. Hello, Miss Sugar, hello, Princess, I can see you watching right now. Maraming salamat for tuning in. So, number 1, ano ang gallbladder? Okay, so yung gallbladder, isa siyang attachment sa ating liver, no? So, kung mahilig kayo sa bangus, at saka kayo talaga yung naghuhugas, nagpre-prepare nito in your kitchen, you will know na meron siyang gallbladder, also known as apdo, di ba? Yun yung little green thing na naka-attach sa likod ng liver, or kung mahilig kayo sa liver ng manok, say for example, meron diyang maliit na pouch na color green, no? At saka yung laman niya, sobrang thick, sobrang dark green, almost black color. At yung color na yun yung tinatawag nating bile, okay? So, anong purpose nun? Bakit naka-attach siya sa liver? At bakit siya naka-attach din sa ating intestines, no? Sa ating gastrointestinal system. So, Ang gallbladder actually, it's just a tawag nating reservoir. Para siyang reserve ng bile. Bile or also known as bile acid. Okay? Meron siyang technical term, parang choledoco acid, something like that. Okay? So, it's an acid na pinupuno niya sa loob ng gallbladder. Okay? So, anong purpose nito? At bakit tayo may ganyan? Gallbladder contains around 30 to 45 ml of bile salts or bile acids. Kailangan natin ng bile so that kapag kumakain tayo ng taba, we will absorb it, we will digest it. Kasi kapag ang taba kinakain mo, hindi siya maa-absorb, hindi siya madadigest kapag walang kasabay na bile. Because our system, tawag dyan, lipid, meron siyang lipid bilayer na hindi siya permeable. Hindi basta-basta makakapasok yung mga nutrients. So, kailangan lagyan ng parang vessel or i-change yung form ng taba na kinakain natin. So, say for example, yung safest coconut oil. Okay? So, it's plant-based, it's organic, and it's very, very healthy. But, kapag kinain mo to at wala kang bile salts or bile acid, hindi mo ito maa-absorb. Ilalabas lang ito ng iyong katawan. Okay? That is actually one of the mechanism of action ng ibang mga tinatawag noon na pampapayat or pampalower ng taba sa katawan. It's because they binablock nila yung secretion ng bile. So kapag walang bile na mag-attach sa iyong taba na kinain, so the fats that you eat, it will not be digested. So lalabas siya as steatorea. Steato meaning fats, rhea meaning palabas, no? So, it can be steatorrhea or magpupupo ka. Magpupupo ka ng puro mantika. So, it's whole unchanged form of feces na galing, unchanged form of oil that is now becoming into feces or poops mo na, no? So, kailangan natin ng bile. That's why na meron tayong gumagawa tayo yon. However, by nature, this is also very interesting kasi kasi may mga tao, 'di ba, na sinasabi low fat diet daw yung natural diet. But this actually proves na humans talaga are designed to eat fats. In fact, meron ginawang organ na para mag-store ng bile so that by the time na kumain ka ng maraming taba, you will be able to digest it. And that is the gallbladder. Imagine mo, yung gallbladder hindi siya ang nagpo-produce ng bile. Storage form lang siya. Para siyang storage area lang. Kasi yung nagpo-produce talaga ng bile is yung liver natin. However, kasi yung liver natin maraming ginagawa, hindi siya pwede mag-concentrate sa pag-produce ng bile lang. So what our great creator did, what God made, no? Amazing talaga. Kasi yung ginawa niya, naggumawa na siya ng extra lalagyan. Yung extra lalagyan na yon, that's the gallbladder. It will be able to store up to 45 ml, 30 to 45 ml of bile salts or bile acids in preparation by the time na kumakain ka ng taba at mailalabas mo yon. So, the primary trigger for secretion of bile acids or bile salts is the fats na nasa tiyan mo, na nasa stomach mo. The moment it comes in your stomach, it will bring a signal to your tawag natin siya, enteric system. Meron siyang system of signaling para hindi siya kailangan pumunta ng brain. Diyan lang mismo, meron silang signal towards each other that will give it a signal na para mag-contract yung gallbladder at lumabas siya ng exactly the same amount of bile na kakailanganin sa kinain mong taba. And as you continuously eat, lalabas siya ng lalabas. Remember, yung bile na yon, yan din yung yun din nagbibigay ng kulay sa ating poops, no? Sa ating dumi, okay? Yan din ang nagbibigay ng kulay. That's why if there are obstruction along the path, magkakaroon ka ng tawag natin yan, acolic feces, meaning walang kulay. So, yung mukha niya parang abo, parang wala siyang, parang puti lang siya or gray, wala siyang bile because it's the green, yellowish, and almost dark black color of our feces is produced by bile, okay? So, kapag nangyari yan, normal lang. So, kakain ka, and then lalabas siya dyan, and then kukunin, kapag kumain ka ng taba, lalabas yung bile, magra-wrap around, and then magiging mycel sila, tinatawag yan, magpo-form sila ng mycel wherein yung labas ng bile magko-coat and allowed entry na siya for digestion. Gagawin na siyang yung nutrients na makukuha mo sa taba na kinain natin, maa-absorb na. Pupunta siya sa liver and doon na siya mapaprocess into whatever forms that it will do. But, bakit nagkakaroon ng stone? Bakit hindi yung ibang tao walang stone? At bakit yung iba nagpo-form ng stone? Yes, it can be said no, na meron talagang tao na prone to stone formation. However, one major factor na magkakaroon ng stone formation is stasis. Anong ibig sabihin ng stasis? Stasis or pagpipirme, okay? Parang na-stranded. Parang nandyan lang siya. Hindi gumagalaw. So, fat stasis, or stasis, bile stasis. Kapag yung bile hindi masyadong gumagalaw, that is actually a byproduct that can actually result to formation of tinatawag, hindi pa stone agad-agad, but it can be bile sludge, okay? So, galing sa medyo liquid form, magiging sludge siya. Medyo thick, medyo malapot, and nandyan lang siya. So, every time, kapag meron ka ng bile sludge, sometimes when you eat fatty food, magkakaroon ka ng somewhat discomfort because your gallbladder will try very hard to compress, no? Para mailabas lang yung bile na yon to accommodate the fats that you are eating. And kapag masyadong natagalan, na hindi pa rin lumalabas, wala pa ring movement within your bile, magkakaroon na ito ng tendency to form stones. So, there are different kinds of stones. Merong mga stone na mga maliliit. Merong mga parang fine stones. Meron ding isang malalaki. So, if you've seen the post I've made with this episode, nakita mo yung stone kanina, para na siyang quail egg. So, yung pinakamalaking stone na yon, that was actually my mother's. So, ngayon, since we're talking about fats and bile, baka natatakot na kayo, especially for those who are already in low carb and intermittent fasting, baka magkaroon kayo niyan. To be safe, to be safe and to be fair about this, si Maming talaga, diagnosed na siya at least 3 years ago. I think bago pa lang ako sa residency, around the first year and second year, and right now, I'm on my 5th year, about to graduate. Around the same time na yun, nagpa-general check-up siya, doon nalaman na meron na siyang stone. And as far as we can remember, it was 4 stones. And only about 2 years, since nagsimula kami mag-low carb at mag-intermittent fasting, yung stone na yon, after all this time, never nagkaroon ng symptoms. Walang symptoms, walang anything. Everything is doing well and okay. Pero, during this time, nangyari, nag-obstruct. Yun pala, yung stone na yon, nandun lang for the longest time. I can take responsibility, I can take accountability, speaking as a supposedly the physician in the family, but I've been complacent as well, Kasi, yung ideally talaga, kapag meron ka ng stone, kapag meron ka ng problema sa ating gallbladder, it has to be addressed first. Hindi pwedeng basta-basta because it can lead into complications like the one na nangyari kay Maming. Pero bakit nangyari yon? Bakit yon nagsasludge? So, we can always think, if other doctors will say, yes, you can say na bawal ang fats because the fats will trigger the production of bile acids na magko-contract yung gallbladder mo para mag-push palabas. But actually, if you will think of the root cause, bile stasis or ang pagiging stranded at walang movement ng bile acid sa ating gallbladder is actually brought about by absence of trigger. And what is that absence of trigger? It's actually a very low-fat diet. That low-fat diet actually can lead into cholesterol bile stasis, meaning walang movement. Just like in the stone sa ating kidneys, kapag may stone natin sa ating kidneys, alam natin na yung sinasabi natin, you have to increase your fluid so that maraming movement, maraming dumadaan na water na movement so that eventually you can flush it out. Yes, masakit kapag dumaan na yung mga stones sa kidney. Ganon din sa gallbladder. Gallbladder is one of those organs na very, very sensitive. Sila dalawa ng liver. Konting stretch lang yan, konting inflammation lang, sobrang sakit na. It's one of the most sensitive. And that is a good thing actually. Kasi kapag hindi sila sensitive, like for example, our pancreas, no? Organ din siya na important. But it's not, malayo siya sa stretch receptors. Wala siyang pain signals. Kaya usually, for those na with tumor in pancreas, nadadiagnose ito na late na, especially if yun yung sa dulo na part. But if it's on the head part na malapit sa stomach, madali siyang nadadiagnose, early stage pa, kasi nga may pain. So, the absence of pain doesn't necessarily mean all bad, and the presence of pain, the absence of pain doesn't really mean good, okay? Especially yung mga matatanda natin, sasabihin lang na, okay lang ako doktora kasi hindi naman masakit. Sometimes, yung walang masakit, yun yung mas nakakatakot. Kasi, we don't have any signal kung when will it be worse. But for our gallbladder, it's really a signal telling us that something is wrong. So, by research, no, there's at least 2 research na very, very scientific, very well-studied, well-done research na kinompare nila a very low-fat diet and the other one with high-fat diet and with a baseline parehong walang stone. Out of 59 subjects dun sa low-fat diet, very low-fat diet, ilan yun? 4 of them developed stones. And then, when they continued after only few months of low-fat diet, and after another set of rounds, around 20%, 10 to 20% of them even developed more stones, okay? Na-develop yung stones nila the moment they didn't eat any fats. So, yun yung pinaka-importante doon. Absence of fat intake, which is unnatural. Hindi siya natural para sa ating katawan, is also a very good reason bakit magkakaroon ng bile stasis. And that bile stasis can be the precursor. Pwede siya maging buto, maging initial trigger, the enzyme of change, no? Yung pinaka number 1 na pwedeng bumuo ng bile sludge and then later on, bile stones. If we can remember, 3 years ago, Maming was already 62, no? So, noon, actually, she grew up loving fats, no? But, yung hindi pa natin alam noon, yung diet talaga namin noon, high fat, high salt, but also very high in sugar. Yun talaga yung diet namin noon. And why is that na merong importance yung high sugar? Kasi insulin still make role, no? Yung insulin, meron pa ding effect nito because bile, if you have to guess, saan galing yung bile? Saan galing yung bile acids na sinisecrete natin? Yung bile actually is one of the many pathways na pwedeng puntahan ng mga taba na nasa katawan natin. 'Di ba? We're always saying na if you consume fats and if you consume carbohydrates at the same time, it will increase the insulin, and that insulin will send a signal na yung mga taba na kinain natin at yung mga taba sa ating katawan is hindi natin gagamitin as energy. We will just store it. Pwede siyang ma-store, pwede siyang ma-preserve in many forms. So, it can be preserved as taba sa ating braso, sa ating bewang. Yun ay tawag natin as peripheral adipose tissue, okay? Or yung taba sa katawan. But it can also be built in sa internal organs natin, nakabalot. Yun yung mas dangerous na taba. That is called visceral fats, no? Usually, yung internal organs natin sa abdomen. That's also the reason why truncal obesity or yung taba na nasa palibot ng ating abdomen is more dangerous than centralized obesity. Yung centralized obesity, overall, mataba. Mataba ang mukha, mataba ang braso, mataba ang tiyan, mataba lahat. Centralized obesity is actually has lesser risk as compared to central obesity. Yung mga tatay natin, lolo natin, tito natin na yun pa ang magsasabi, oy, yung taba-taba mo na, but sila hindi mataba. Pero yung mga tiyan nila, ang lalaki. So those people are what we call as TOFI, thin outside, fat inside. But another pathway of cholesterol synthesis and cholesterol regulation and metabolism, magiging blood cholesterol din siya. So, it can be triglycerides, yun yung sa blood test natin, it can be LDL, HDL, yun sila, magiging ganyan sila. VLDL, very low density lipoprotein, all those. But another pathway na hindi masyadong ganon ka-common or hindi ganon ka-famous for our cholesterol is actually bile production. So, imagine if you are eating carbohydrates, so much carbohydrates, but less fats, you are actually triggering more bile production, but without bile consumption, walang bile movement. So, walang galawan. And if I can recall, during those times, kasi nga lumaki si maming na kaming lahat, lumaki kami sa mahilig talaga kaming kumain. So, we are not thinking about our health at all. Yung dictum namin noon, okay lang mabuhay ng short, no? Shorter life is okay as long as it's full of yummy, nutritious, and very meaningful life. So, we've always been living in an idea na quality tayo, hindi tayo quantity. But later on, we realized, why not if you can have both? You can have both the quality of life and the quantity of life itself. The longer and the more meaningful life. And we cannot do that without taking care of our health. But way back that time, no? Kabago pa lang akong doktor noon, I think mga 2 years ago. So, my mindset was nowhere beyond the textbooks that I learned, that the textbooks that I studied in medical school, in my training. We no longer discussed about nutrition. So, ganun pa din. Kahit si maming pinagbawalan namin, kaming lahat as much as possible, medyo naglilimit din sa oil, no? So, kapag nagpiprito kami, nilalagyan din ng tissue, di ba? Noon yun, nilalagay ng tissue, as much as possible, sugba lang, i-grill lang yung mga pagkain, walang oil, tinola, or sinabawan, yung mga ganon. And who knows, baka yung mga trigger na yon, dun yung mga time that those stone was formed, no? Especially na yung laki ng kanyang stone ngayon is sobra parang quail egg na. Hindi ko nga lang maabot kasi hindi ko nakita kanina. Pakita ko sa inyo later. Pero yun yung nasa picture kanina. So, but the most important, aside, it's really two reasons why there is stone formation. So, yung isa, bile stasis, kapag hindi gumagalaw, walang movement, walang trigger yung bile na nasa gallbladder lang. Kasi normally, by nature, dapat continuous siyang fina-flush out. Continuous flushing and then replenish ulit by the liver and then ipa-flush ulit kapag kumain ka ng taba. And then yung liver, magsisecrete ulit, gagawa ulit. But if you are not eating fats, not eating enough fats, that's actually a trouble. That's actually a trigger na magsistasis siya. But if there is kapag wala naman masyadong pumupuno pa sa kanya, wala namang movement, that stasis can stay lang that way, no? Walang effect. But if you are eating carbohydrates at the same time, it will actually trigger your liver to produce more and more bile. So kapag maraming bile at saka wala namang movement, so anong tendency? Magpipirme lang siya doon, and that can cause the bile stasis, bile sludge, and eventually bile stones. Okay? So, yun, nangyari yun kay maming. So, if ever meron ng cholesterol bile, and at the same time, meron ka ng stone, no? Cholesterol bile, sorry. Kapag meron ka ng bile stones or gallbladder stones sa katawan mo, pwede ka pa bang mag-low carb? Pwede ka pa ba mag-fasting, no? Fasting is actually somewhat okay. But with low carb, it's automatic eh. Kapag yung low carb ka, most likely you're getting your nutrients both from proteins and fats. And if you are on keto, it's really high fats. So the answer dyan is actually medyo complicated, but it is really, really interesting. Initially, you may not want to take in a lot of fats kapag meron ka ng cholesterol stone, okay? Especially if malaki ito. You can have a baseline ultrasound. You can check kung gaano kalaki. If it's small enough to pass through the bile duct, Kasi, di ba, parang pouch siya. Yung mukha niya parang pear-shaped. At meron siyang dalawang duct. Yung isa, yung galing sa liver, at saka yung isa, yung papuntang stomach, papuntang intestine, no? Yung duodenum. Yung duodenum, yun yung first part ng intestine natin. After yung stomach, meron diyang parang letter C, yun yung duodenum. Dun lumalabas yung bile. Kapag merong stone, but maliit lang. Like for example, millimeters lang, 1-2 millimeters. And yung ating bile na duct, no, yung parang tubo palabas, it can stretchable siya actually. It somewhat collapse when relaxed at pero kapag merong tendency na mo-push, pwede siya mag-expand. So, pwede kang kumain pa din hinay-hinay with high fat diet. But because actually naturally pwede na yun mismo ang magiging cure for your stone because you will flush it out. But mind you, it will be very painful. Masakit pa rin siya. But long-term effect would be good kasi nailabas mo. Okay? What you cannot do though is have a high carbohydrate diet. Because when you are doing high carbohydrate diet, walang movement. At the same time, the production of bile will still continue. Mas dadami yung production ng bile and you're increasing the risk na magkaroon pa na mas palakihin yung mga stone na yon. Okay? But if you already have a stone na malaki na and hindi na siya ultrasonographically, no? By ultrasound, alam na hindi na makakapass through. Say for example, we can have a limit of 5 mm or half of a centimeter, no? 0.5 centimeter na sa ating bile duct. If yung stone mo is more than that na, say for example, 5 na or 6 or 7, malaking chance na hindi na yan maipapass through. So, you need to consult your hepatobiliary doctors, no? Sila yung mga general surgeons na nag-specialize sa liver and gallbladder. So, hepatobiliary sila, hepatobiliary diseases specialist. Kasi, you can have options. There are options na pwedeng i-remove yung stone through surgery, and ngayon with technology nagkakaroon na rin ng gamot na pwedeng tunawin yung gallbladder stone. So it will be on a case-to-case basis. So it is important na kapag meron ka ng gallstones na malaki na at impossible na mag-pass through to your gallbladder, to your pwede mo pang ilabas, it is important that you manage it first. Kailangan munang i-address yon. So, you have to consult with a specialist para mabigyan kayo ng kinakailangang lunas. It can be cholecystectomy, total removal of the gallbladder. Pag-uusapan din natin yan. Anong mangyayari kapag na-remove yung gallbladder? Kapag wala ka ng reserve, no? Pag-uusapan natin yan mamaya. But that is one of the options. Kaya kapag malaki na, kasi yung idea, once na nakitaan ka na ng stone, you are most likely yung tinatawag na stone former. So kapag kinuha mo yung stone na lang, by epidemiology, by research, na-observe natin na meron pa ring recurrence, no? Meron pa ring recurrence. But if you have to think about it, magkakaroon pa rin yan ng recurrence. Bakit? Dahil right after that surgery, anong advice ba na sinasabi kapag meron kang para nakitaan ka ng problema sa gallbladder? You have to do a low-fat diet. Yun yung sinasabi. So, with low-fat diet, you are actually promoting even more stone formation. Kaya natural, no? It's common sense. Ni-remove mo yung stone, and hindi mo kinuha yung whole gallbladder, and most likely, it will form another stone again. Simply because you are allowing that person, that patient, to have, you are promoting bile stasis kasi there's no trigger for bile movement, bile flushing, kasi walang fat na kinakain, kasi nga low fat, and high carbohydrate. Kasi with the high carbohydrate, you are promoting more and more bile production. So natural, it's gonna be there for so long. It's gonna form stasis again. It's gonna be bile sludge again, and eventually it can form stones again. So by practice, parang automatic siya. Kapag nagkaroon ka na ng cholesterol stone, and especially if it already caused obstruction, nag-obstruct na siya, And kapag nag-obstruct na siya, at kasi continuous yung production, at saka magkakaroon na ng overgrowth, or magkakaroon na ng an infection from the bacteria na galing sa intestines natin, and that can cause the whole problem of cholecystitis. So, cholecystitis is the infection or inflammation of the gallbladder, okay? So, imaginein mo, yung gallbladder actually, kapag natural lang siya, yung thickness ng kanyang wall, yung kanyang supot, yung thickness niya parang balloon lang. Yung malaking balloon na hindi na-inflate, parang ganon lang siya. However, with maming, alam nyo ba, pre-op, yung thickness ng kanyang gallbladder wall, it's already 1.3 centimeters. So, ganon na siya kakapal. Sobrang kapal na. And also, nag-obstruct na siya. So, kailangan na talagang i-remove yung kanyang gallbladder. So, maming underwent partial gallbladder removal or partial cholecystectomy. Yun yung term na yon, no? Hindi siya nakuha ng buong-buo kasi sobrang laki yung ng gallbladder niya. Sobrang inflamed ng gallbladder niya na hindi mo kuha. And bakit nangyari yon? Yes, nasabi na natin yung last time, we admit kasi si maming nakakain talaga ng kasabay ang carbohydrates at ng taba, which was a very yummy pork barbecue, no? Ngayon, na-blame na naman yung pork barbecue. Pero, actually, yung pork barbecue, although siya yung trigger na kung bakit nag-contract yung gallbladder, no? But actually, eventually, it will happen. It's inevitable. Mangyayari talaga yon. It's just that it happened during that time. And the fast, supposedly, yung contraction yan is slow contraction. Kasi yung fats natin, between fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, yung fats and proteins are the ones na sabi natin, nagde-delay ng gastric delaying time, no? Medyo matagal yung pag-delay nila kasi mas complicated sila i-absorb ng katawan natin. Mas complicated silang i-digest. That's why kapag kumain ka nun, supposedly mahina, hindi matagal, hindi mabilis gumalaw yung tiyan mo. But when you're eating carbohydrates, it has a short gastric delay time, no? So kapag kumain ka ng carbohydrates, madali talaga yon. Madali yung bowel movement. That's why kapag kumain ka ng tinapay, for example, or rice, maya-maya lang, gutom na gutom ka na naman. But when you're eating proteins and fats, for example, na very nutrient dense, alam mong matagal kang busog kasi mahina sila gumalaw sa tiyan natin. But if you eat them all together, all at once, masyadong nako-confuse yan yung katawan natin. Because by nature, minsan lang tayo kumakain ng sabay. Kasi nga, 'di ba? Alam na natin, by nature supposedly kumakain tayo ng mga carbohydrate-rich foods, sugary foods lang during harvest season. And usually kapag harvest season, maraming prutas, maraming produce na available around. So nangyayari nun, hindi talaga nag-hunting yung mga ancestors natin na caveman at hunters and gatherers. Kasi bakit pa sila mag-hunting na maraming na harvest season? So, usually, during the time, yung kinakain nila, puro carbs lang talaga. Carbs and carbs. Until maubos nila yung harvest season na yon. And that's when they go back again to the more than around 9 to 10 months of the year na naka-low carb na naman sila. Mostly animal diet and kung meron man mga little greens and nuts na available around, no? And of course, remember with fasting. Si TP nag-ask, Doc, pork barbecue, at ano po yung carbs na nakakain ni Maming? Sus, yung nakakain ni Maming. Kasi nag-Christmas party kami sa Bayanihan Mission. Bayanihan Mission is our NGO that we established during the height of the pandemic. And after a while, no, since we were not so active na, since everybody went back to normal, yung mga volunteers natin noon, na mga doctors noon, but na mga interns noon during the pandemic, but now are doctors na, full-fledged doctors. So, a lot of them, sila talaga ang mga babait na mga batang yon. Sila talaga ang nagpapack ng mga food packs, and then we are the ones distributing it sa mga recipients natin. So, we had somewhat a year-ender gathering Christmas celebration to meet up again. At doon, merong chocolate cake na sobrang masarap daw. But Ako, since hindi ako kumain noon, I had yung sinabi ko sa inyo, nag-low carb ako na night, pero I think kumain ba ako noon bago umuwi? Hindi talaga ako, kasi nagdala ako ng low carb na dessert noon. But merong isang slice na natira, and alam kong gusto yun ni Maming. So, you know, kahit alam kong masama sa kanya, but sometimes, meron pa rin part sa atin na gusto natin siyang masiyahan, o ganon. So, yun, kinain ni Maming yung slice of cake na yun, and right then and there, kinain din niya yung apat na barbecue sticks, all straight. Sobrang nagmamadali siya because my brother who was not feeling well then was already calling her. So, nagmamadali siya. So, kaya siguro nagmadali din yung kanyang gallbladder, and napag-contract niya ng ganon, na stuck na siya sa kanyang tawag natin, yung funnel, sa edge ng gallbladder doon, at nag-obstruct na. So, yun ang nangyari kay Maming, and it got complicated, na-infect na. We tried managing it at home, pero hindi na talaga kaya, and we did an emergency ultrasound, at doon na nakita na merong 4 na stone. Still the same stones, no? Still the same stones pala yung 3 years, 4 years ago. But this time, nakastock na siya. Hindi nag-o-obstruct na siya. Hindi na siya makalabas sa tawag natin cystic duct, okay? Meron yung part ng bile duct ng hepatobiliary system, yung tawag doon, na doon niya siya malaki, at na-stuck na yung stonage doon, at hindi na makalabas. Kaya, Maming had to undergo a procedure. Buti na lang it was not an emergency procedure. Kasi kapag emergency procedure, hiwa talaga, galing sa chest, no, sa baba ng chest, going sa puson, ilalim ng pusod, yun, ganun kahaba yung incision supposedly. But because of the very good doctors around, the anesthesia team, and the surgeons, led by Dr. Baldivinos, no, maraming salamat, ginawa nila itong elective under laparoscopic na cholecystectomy. So, maliliit lang yung incision ni Maming. 4 siya na incision, but very small. 2 cm, at saka yung iba, yung parang maliit na butas-butas lang. So, okay na siya ngayon. So, ano ang mangyayari? For example, kapag wala ka ng gallbladder. Kaya kung tinanggal na, no? If, say, for example, you underwent total gallbladder resection or total cholecystectomy na, makakakain ka pa ba ng taba? Will you be able to absorb or digest pa? Ma-digest pa ba yung pagkain na kinakain mo, especially when you're in low carb diet and high fat diet? Fortunately, yes, makakakain ka pa din, okay? And God made it in such a way, kahit modern day na yung resection, pero ginawa pa rin niya ng paraan para hindi tayo maging malnourished. Kasi kailangan talaga natin ng taba sa ating katawan, or else we will have multiple nutrient deficiency na mga lipid vitamins, no? Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin C, yun sila, mga lipid soluble sila na components of vitamins na kailangan talaga ng bile to be absorbed. So, ano ang mangyayari? Yes, makakakain ka ba din, but it will take time. Initially, mag-a-adjust ka. So, pa konti-konti lang. And based on how you eat, your liver will actually keep on producing bile according to your usual diet. So, this time, as yung sinabi natin, yung gallbladder hindi naman nagpo-produce ng bile, storage lang siya. So, this time, magiging direct line na. Galing sa liver, yung pag-produce ng kanyang bile, diretso na sa intestines. So, but meron lang siyang sigurong cap, no? Or meron siyang parang maximum. Kasi, kapag kumain ka, for example, ng kalahating kilong lechon na puro taba lang, hindi makaka-keep up yung production ng bile ng liver mo as compared to noon na meron ka pang bile. So, what will happen? You will just absorb and digest the amount of fats na nakayang gawin ng liver mo. And our body is so intelligent na pwede din niya ipatagal. Pwede niyang patagalin yung pag-stay, no? Pag-stay ng iyong fats in your intestines, so that parang hihintayin niya yung pag-produce ng bile ng liver para ma-absorb niya ito as much as it can. Pero those na hindi na makayang i-absorb, you have to really go out, especially if you keep on eating. So if you keep on eating, wala nang point, no, wala nang way yung tiyan mo, but kailangan niya itong move it down until you can move it at magiging dumi na siya. And if you have fats na undigested, lalabas siya as fats pa din. So, magkakaroon ka ng dumi na merong mga lumulutang-lutang na mga oils, no? So, medyo kadiri siya. And sorry for that if you are already about to have your dinner. So, I hope that was clear, no? So, yung very important with those na merong gallbladder stones or gallbladder sludge, you have to consult first and seek advice para mawala iyon. If it's just small, like granules lang, parang sand lang siya, parang very fine sands lang siya, you can actually continue your diet and eventually pass it out, no? And you can just have a serial monitoring of your gallbladder. Parang mag-serial ultrasound ka, say for example, every 6 months and check, no? And I understand, meron talaga yung iba. Hello, Ralph! Alam mo talaga, ikaw talaga. So, I'm glad you're there. So, I'm so happy na nandito kayong lahat. Anyway, for those naman na natatakot, I understand. There are those people talaga na once they experience a gallbladder, meron siyang tawag, colicky pain. Yun ba yun? Yung colicky pain ng gawa ng stone from the gallbladder is sobrang sakit. Parang ganun din yung when you have a kidney stone, meron siyang colicky pain na sobrang sakit. And it can be traumatic. It can, magkaka-phobia ka talaga. Hello, Ayeng. Maraming salamat sa iyong mga hearts dyan. And hello din po, Sharon Roldan. I'm glad that you find this episode informative. Okay? So, for those na naka-experience na, I understand, no, na natatakot na talaga sila. And what they do, usually, is to lower their fat intake. Lower it down. Kasi alam nila, the moment they eat fat, it will trigger the gallbladder to contract and they will experience that pain again. And it's very understandable. But I hope you know na that trigger, no, that initial trigger, if you're having just bile sludge, for example, na meron pang chance, it will actually be good long term. Kasi long term wise, you will have a continuous replenish, no? Magkakaroon ng movement yung gallbladder mo. It will accommodate new bile and it will flush out the old bile and it can go into a continuous cycle so long as you also limit your carbohydrate intake so that the bile acid production will not be so much more than what you need. Dapat yung bile acid production mo at a low rate lang, enough lang sa kailangan mo to digest the fats that you eat. But if you are over-consuming your carbohydrates, you will have the tendency to increase your bile production as well, especially for those that are not fat formers. Imagine, I've been telling you this many times, no? Barati nating sinasabi niyan na yung effect ng insulin to individual, iba-iba talaga. So for some, they are fat formers. I think I belong to that group na whenever I take a lot of sugars and insulin spikes, no, tumataba talaga ako. Lumalaki yung pisngi ko, yung ganyan. But for others naman, hindi sila tumataba. But the insulin effect sa kanila is the increased in inflammation. So lumalabas siya as pimples, and somewhat for me, it's also like that kasi lumalabas yung allergy ko, may rhinitis, may conjunctivitis, lumalabas lahat. And for some, hindi obvious, but it can have an up-regulation, meaning increased regulation of metabolism on that pathway, which can be bile production. So yun. So I hope that is clear. And if you still feel like hindi nyo na alam, no, and if it's the first time that you've seen this and you're afraid baka meron kayong bile problems or gallbladder problems, you can have an ultrasound. Pwede kayong mag-upper abdominal ultrasound just to check your gallbladder and your liver. If you have fatty liver, much more that you usually they go together kasi they are both byproduct of increased carbohydrate intake. Ang fatty liver lang, it can be both high carbohydrate intake and high fat diet, okay? High carb, high fat. And for those in gallbladder stone, yes, it can also be both, no? I think may nagtanong kanina. Hello, Helbert. Helbert is a good friend of my brother from high school, watching from Ibe Magalona. I think may nagtanong kanina, sino yan? Good eve, Doc. In my case, polyps po ang nakita sa akin. Paano po i-manage para di siya lalaki? So, polyps is just an inflammatory or number one of the reasons yan, one of the highest manifestation of insulin resistance or in too much chronic insulin in the body. Kasi insulin will act as growth factor. Insulin is the number one anabolic hormone, meaning building up hormone. And kapag supposedly yung binibuild up niya for children, for the pregnant woman, is to formation of bones, of body parts, of all that. But yung sinasabi natin always, kapag totoong tao ka na, malaking tao ka na, mature human being ka na, you don't need a lot of insulin. But if you keep on ingesting foods that will make you spike insulin, that anabolic production will still have an effect. Hindi lang natin alam kung saan siya magte-take effect sa inyo. And it can be in the form of polyps. So, polyps, in general, by definition, it's like yung polyps na yan in Greek word, yung ibig sabihin lang yan, finger-like projections, okay? Finger-like projections. So, mga ganyan-ganyan lang siya, okay? So, those finger-like projections are actually brought about by too much carbohydrate intake. So, I believe, I have not read a lot of research specifically for gallbladder polyp. I think wala namang masyadong gumagawa pa niyan, especially na the acceptance of the medical world when it comes to fasting and low carb is hindi pa ganon ka-open nowadays. But eventually, I believe we will get there. By fasting, alam natin, I believe in fasting, the power of fasting, the power of healing of the human body, no, to heal, to reabsorb. Polyps, you can think of it as excess energy, as excess tissue in our body. And kapag parang sinarve mo, parang ginutom mo yung sarili mo, it will start scavenging on the unnecessary parts of your body. And unnecessary parts meaning walang masyadong function, and one of those could be the polyps, okay? So pwede siya. For me, there is a possibility na pwede siya ma-reabsorb, but of course with the right mindset on how to do proper fasting and how to do low carb feasting, no, how you can eat. Just important lang na your polyps is well managed and well diagnosed, na walang complications of possible obstruction, or else again, if merong stone dyan, that there's a risk for obstruction, most likely, kailangan natin yang i-manage muna. Kailangan muna yang alisin. Hello, Ayeng. Hello, Eleanor. TP. Ma'am TP, Doc, I have gallbladder stone way back pa. I think 20 years ago. I had 2 attacks, but I was able to recover from it. Di ako nagpa-opera. So, that's good, no? So, if you have a gallbladder stone and nasa sa'yo pa yung ultrasound result, I advise you to have another ultrasound result. And you can compare, no? Baka ikaw pa ang maging first documented na nagkaroon ng full recovery or full dissolution na pagkawala ng gallbladder stone just by lifestyle change alone, no? So, why not? Okay? Sir Norwin, thank you so much. Yes, attentive talaga because it's not just us. Ako, hindi ko rin alam if meron pa ako. Never pa ako nagpa-ultrasound. But never din ako nagkaroon ng abdominal pain or anything. Si maming kasi, dinadala lang niya. At saka medyo mataas talaga yung pain tolerance niya. But it's always been there, no? At saka nung pag-open ng kanyang abdomen, nakita ng surgeon natin na medyo malaki talaga, and it has a lot of signs na chronic na talaga. Sobrang tagal na dinadala niya. And if we can, in hindsight, no, we can remember na minsan, meron talaga siyang episode after heavy meal na she has to lie down kasi sumasakit yung sikmura niya. Yung parang nasuntok no? Yun yung ibig, yung feeling mo, yung parang nasuntok. Although, hindi pa naman siya nasuntok sa buhay niya. Pero, yun yung feeling niya. Parang nasuntok. And then, she will lie down. And then, she will recover. But maybe, those times, no, parang nag-obstruct. We can just presume na baka meron na yung nag-obstruct na yung stone. At saka, nagba-backward lang pa urong sulong. Kaya na okay siya. But this time around, and I think also, it is a blessing in disguise. Kasi sabi ng kanyang attending surgeons, shout out to Dr. Oano, Dr. Ernest ko, Precious, Dr. Choi, no? Sabi nila, kung natagalan pa yon in just a few hours or something, baka mag-rupture na. And once it already ruptures, it can get a lot complicated. Pwedeng yung bile acid, which is very, very irritant, no? Na supposedly nasa loob lang siya. Kasi nga, yung abdo ng bangus, sobrang pait. So, it's really acid. It's really an irritant na pwedeng mag-compromise yung whole peritoneum, yung whole abdominal cavity, ma-infect, magkaroon ng peritonitis, and it can lead to sepsis, and it can be life-threatening. So, thank God pa din, and it's a blessing in disguise, and I think this is just very timely, especially ngayong mga holiday season, for us to be more mindful, to be sure, no, to be sure first of our status before we go into any kung anumang feast na kailangan natin gawin. Kasi with mommy, for example, it was just the cake, no, together with the pork barbecue. It was like an accident, but somewhat we know, no, na that didn't happen once, no. It happened way back. Binigyan na kami ng chance ni Lord ng many times, no, but hindi pa rin naniwala. It has to reach this point for us to really realize how much we should never underestimate the effects of carbohydrates. It's whenever taken in together with fats, okay? So, yes, the body will go into reset when fasting. That is very true. Between low carb and fasting, alam natin they should be sabay. Sabay yan. For me, it's really, dapat sabay talaga. But if I have to choose, I will choose fasting and then low carb, no? Kasi fasting is very natural to us. Our body is very adapted. It can even adapt to high carb intake from time to time. Makaka-adjust yan. But fasting should be incorporated. Hindi pwedeng forever kang kumakain. Kahit gaano pa yan ka low carb. But if you're eating it every day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, I'm not sure if you will really be at the top of your health, no? Kahit yung mga matatanda natin, yung mga lolo't lola natin na very lucky to reach 90s, 80s, you can try to watch how they eat. Kumakain man sila ng umaga, kumakain man sila ng gabi, pero hindi ganon kaaga or hindi ganon kagabi. And what they eat actually is very small. Seldom you can make them eat a whole rice, no, a whole cup of rice, or finish a whole viand na the usual serving that we eat. So, ganon. Importante yon. So, anong oras na ba? It's already 6:41. Na-late tayo kanina because inasikaso pa namin yung discharge ni Maming and also Bapi kasi nakauwi na din sila. So, thank you so much. And, yes, si Chloe, my dear pala yung nagsabi nun. Yeah, we really believe in the power of our own body, natural capacity of our body to reset, to heal itself. But, it has to be given the right opportunity, the right time, na wala munang disturbo, okay? So, Maming right now is recovering, and yes, I think for the next 2 weeks, the next 3 weeks, she will be under low-fat diet, okay? Low-fat because it will be very painful pa for her. At saka wala na naman siyang risk for stasis kasi halos wala na natira sa kanyang gallbladder. But we will still stay low-carb, no? So, most likely, high-protein intake siya, especially na kailangan niyang mag-recover. So, yun yung kakainin niya yun. But the moment she is no longer in pain at saka okay na yung surgical wound niya at naka-remove na yung drain niya, we can start slowly going back to our normal, low-carb, high-fat, moderate intake diet. Okay? Margaret, how about angiomyolymphoma, doc? Is it okay doing the LCIF way? So, that one is a malignant type of lymphoma. So, yung sinasabi natin, always LCIF, especially low carb, no, walang kontra yan, kahit sino pa yan. Kung hindi man siya treat, no, if it will not heal your disease, at least, at minimum, it will not cause further disease, or for those na mga cancerous and tumor, it will not feed your tumor. Kasi tumors thrive and they get bigger, they get nourished with carbohydrate. Kaya kumakain ng taba, but kumakain sila ng sugar, glucose, and part of it from the glutamate and glutamine na galing sa proteins, okay? But not all amino acids and proteins kinakain nila. So, there is that pathway na nagsosupply sa kanila, but not too much. So, if you will ask if okay lang, yes, it's okay. It's okay for everyone to do the low carb kasi nililabel lang natin siya as low carb, but naturally, it is actually the natural human diet. Ginawa lang natin siyang low carb in comparison to the balanced modern diet na kinalakihan natin. The American guidelines, food dietary guidelines, the food pyramid na kinalakihan natin. But actually, hindi talaga siya ganon ka-sustainable. That's why a normal, balanced diet is the one that has primarily pushed us to this edge kung saan marami sa atin ang namamatay because of modern day lifestyle diseases. And one way to counter that is to go back to our roots, try to do the low carb way, as if yung iba, they want to label it more complicated. So, paleo diet, so Paleolithic period, no, going still to the caveman hunter and gatherer time. So, ganon. We don't need to go that far, but at least in macronutrient level, mostly your foods will be coming from healthy fats, healthy proteins, and if you choose to eat carbohydrates, those that are low in calories, low caloric, but high nutrient dense types of carbohydrates. So ano yon? So these are usually vegetables above ground. And kung gusto ka man mag-fruits, yes, you can still eat fruits. Meron lang siyang, alam mo naman na hindi, basta as long as hindi siya on top of everything and you somewhat limit your total carbohydrate intake to 20 to 50 grams per day. If you want to know about fruits, just visit my page. I think I made about post about that, about all of the most common fruits and ilang ratio, ilang servings na pwedeng i-allowed sa atin to eat in a day. Of course, yun lang yan. So, its time is already 6:46. I think mag-1 hour na tayo. Thank you so much for asking. CKD po daw, pwede sa LC. So, pwede ang CKD, kahit CKD pa siya, chronic kidney disease, kailangan pa rin siyang kumain. And alam nyo ba kung ang rason kung bakit siya nagkaroon ng chronic kidney disease in the first place? Of course, it's the sugar that's damaging the kidneys, hindi yung salt. Salt is just one of the functions of the kidneys, no? Isa lang yan sa filter niya. But salt alone will not damage your kidneys. We were, by evolution, yung salt, galing tayo sa, sabi ng evolution, di ba? We evolved from a single cell organism that came from the sea, no? That's why, nung nag-evolve yung single cell organism na yon, umalis siya sa dagat. But what it carried with it is the salt inside. That's why, yung electrolytes natin sa loob ng ating katawan is somewhat similar to salt. That's why, yung most common na electrolytes sa ating katawan is sodium chloride. So, sodium, asin yun. So, that is salt. So, we can actually tolerate a lot of salt. But what we cannot tolerate is sugar. Sugar is so new for our body, supposedly allowed to take in during harvest season only, and our metabolism has not adopted to it. So maybe in the next 2 million years, but for now, baka in the next 2 million years, baka maka-adapt na yung DNA natin. But as of this time, for the last 2 million years, hindi sanay yung katawan natin with sugar. That's why we have to avoid it. And if na-damage na yung kidneys mo with sugar, na naging CKD na siya, chronic kidney disease na siya, kidney failure, na kailangan ng i-dialysis, much more that you have to go into the natural diet, which is what we have now, the low-carb diet, because it will at least preserve the organs that are still left. Kasi wala talagang, the dialysis alone, the kidney failure alone can actually be managed by dialysis. The kidney failure alone can be managed by dialysis. But people under dialysis die because of complications. Poor lung function, poor heart function, prone to infection, all those. And you can strengthen them by doing at least not adding insult to them by removing the processed foods and sugar in your system. So, yun. Lagi nasisisi. Oo nga, yun na lang. Lagi nasisisi. Raymond Garcia K, yung coffee with butter will break the fast. It's already called dirty fasting. So, yung fasting natin, we have different definition. Breaking a fast na masisira yung ketosis, no, hindi siya makakasira ng ketosis because it will still promote ketogenesis because wala namang insulin na magsa-stop ng ketosis. And that butter that you will use, it will just add to the fuel that you will use as energy during fasting. But when fasting, breaking a fast, when it comes to autophagy, meaning the self-cleansing mechanism of your body, yes, it will break the fast when it comes to speaking of autophagy or yung cleansing. Kasi nga, at that time, the cleansing will be put on hold kasi hindi niya gagamitin yung taba sa katawan mo kasi gagamitin niya muna yung butter na kinain mo. Okay? So, yun. But that's just minimal as long as if hindi ka naman on serious talaga na conditions like an end-stage cancer or other illnesses na doing fasting for therapeutic reasons, you can do so. Hindi naman tayo kailangan mag-stress about it. Too much stress, remember, can also lower down your immune system. Kaya si Mami ngayon, it's here in our other place para makarest siya ng mabuti. Break muna siya from all the household chores. Even for taking care of Bapi, we will ask someone to take care of Bapi first so that Mami can recover, okay? Can fully recover. Shell, ask ko lang po kung pwede isabay ang Mct oil while on fasting. So, it's the same. That is considered as dirty fasting when it comes to autophagy na benefits. But if you're just talking about ketosis, especially just for weight loss, then it's okay. Just know though na if too much yung kinakain mo na kinukonsumo na Mct oil, your weight loss might be on hold. Baka mag-stall siya. Kasi nga, it will not activate lipolysis. Hindi siya mag-activate ng pagtunaw ng taba ng iyong katawan because it will make use first of the Mct oil as energy. But if you are doing this while on extreme exercises, doing P90X, doing HIIT, then you can consume that. Mas better yan. Innocence is salt. Forever scapegoat. Oo nga. Salt is okay. Salt is white na. But there is another that it's pure, white, and deadly. Isang book din yan. Pure, white, and deadly. And that is the sugar. So, laging nasisisi. Yes, Doc, I agree. Only sugar not needed in our body and its components and systems because sugar, as what we always say, is non-essential. Kaya natin gawin ang sugar if we really need it, no? And we need it, but only in minimum amount by our brain, no? But the rest of our body can function without sugar, so it's okay. And, ayeng, tama, chill lang, fast whenever it's also convenient for you. Thank you also, TP, for tuning in, for staying from start to finish, and please share this with your family and friends. Save this in your file para in case merong magtanong ulit and meron kayong gustong i-share nito ulit, you can easily access it and share this with you. But for now, I have duties and responsibilities as daughter and sister to Bapi and Maming, at marami pa kaming ibang gagawin. I have to go for now. I love you, Mane. I love you so much. Thank you so much to each and everyone. Till next Friday. Ano bang next Friday? So that's already 31. I know, that's January 1. So, sabay tayo na Christmas and see you na naman ulit by New Year. Advance Happy New Year to each and everyone. Stay low carb, stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.